The Waterford crystal clinked against the Lenox china as my mother set the table for our mandatory Sunday brunch. Everything had to be perfect, as always. The Vandergelt family image needed to be maintained, even if it was just for show. I'm Brooke Vandergelt, though my family barely acknowledges the Vandergelt part anymore. At 32, I'm the disappointment who chose to work in Silicon Valley instead of joining the family's real estate empire on the Gold Coast of Long Island. The black sheep who wore skinny jeans to country club luncheons and suggested cloud-based solutions for our property management software when I was just 19. Brooke, my mother, called from the dining room, her voice carrying that familiar note of disapproval. Your father wants everyone here by noon sharp, and please wear something appropriate this time. I glanced down at my casual theory blazer and silk equipment blouse. The outfit probably cost more than her entire dining set, but she'd never know that. I'd learned long ago to keep my success quiet, to let them think I was struggling in my little tech thing, as they called it. If they only knew. The truth was, I'd been 3 steps ahead of them for years. While they bragged about their Hamptons estates and beachfront properties, I was building something much bigger. But today, everything will change. They'd force my hand. And now it was time to show them exactly who they'd been looking down on all these years. I arrived at 11:55 a.m., parking my sensible Subaru Outback behind my brother Chad's shiny new Bentley. He'd always been the golden child, following in our father's footsteps, playing the role of the handsome heir. He was also running their business into the ground with his Aspen ski trips, bottle service tabs, and ill-advised art investments. But heaven forbid anyone to mention that at Sunday brunch. The house was exactly as it had been since my childhood, a sprawling shingle-style mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut that screamed old money, even though our family's wealth only went back 2 generations. My grandfather had built the real estate empire from nothing. But my father, Richard Vandergelt, preferred to pretend we had blue blood going back to the Mayflower. You're almost late, my mother said by way of greeting, eyeing my clothes with barely concealed disdain. Almost isn't late, Mom, I replied, hanging my coat in the foyer. How's the new membership at the Round Hill Club going? She stiffened slightly. They didn't know I knew about their rejection from the Round Hill Club, the 3rd such rejection this year. Their social standing wasn't what it used to be, though. They were desperately trying to hide it. In the dining room, Chad was already seated, his wife Brittany beside him, both of them looking like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren ad. My father stood at the head of the table, swirling his single malt scotch like he was starring in his own movie about wealthy patriarchs. Brooke, he nodded curtly. Glad you could tear yourself away from your computers. I smiled, taking my seat. If he only knew that those computers had helped me build a tech empire worth billions, or that I owned controlling shares in 3 major AI companies. But today wasn't about my success. It was about their failure and the choice they were about to make. Now that everyone's here, my father began setting down his glass with practiced authority. We need to discuss some family business. Here it comes, I thought, maintaining my calm expression. The real estate market is entering an exciting new phase of expansion, he continued, though I could see the strain around his eyes. We're planning to acquire 3 new properties by year's end. I knew this was a lie. Their latest financial reports, which they didn't know I had access to, showed they were barely staying afloat. Chad's gambling debts and failed side ventures had bled them dry, and their attempts to compete with Zillow and Redfin were failing miserably. That's wonderful, dear, my mother beamed, passing the eggs Benedict. Brooke, you really should reconsider joining the family business. It's not too late to give up this coding phase. I took a small serving of eggs, noting how Brittany's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her mimosa. She knew about Chad's debts had probably been the one writing checks to cover them. Actually, my father cleared his throat. That's part of what we need to discuss. Brooke, your grandfather's trust fund, the one you've been using as collateral for business loans. I interrupted quietly. The one you assumed I didn't know you were raiding to stay afloat. The room went silent. My father's face reddened slightly. How did you... He started, but caught himself. That's privileged information. Is it like the 3 rejected bank loan applications this month, or the foreclosure notice on the Fifth Avenue penthouse. Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. Dad, what is she talking about? Nothing. My father snapped. Brooke's obviously been poking around where she doesn't belong, but that ends now. Oh, he straightened in his chair, attempting to reclaim his authority. We're cutting you off, Brooke. No more trust fund, no more family support. Clearly, you don't understand loyalty or family values. My mother gasped appropriately, right on cue. Brittany stared at her plate. Chad tried to smirk, but couldn't quite manage it. I set down my water glass carefully. Before you continue, Dad, maybe you should take a look at this. I pulled out my phone, opening a particular folder I'd prepared for this moment. What's that supposed to be? He scoffed. The truth, I said, simply turning the screen toward him. About who really owns Vandergelt Properties Group. All of it. As my father's eyes scanned the document, his face went from red to white faster than I thought possible. Because there, in clear corporate documentation, was proof that his daughter, the one he was about to cut off, had secretly become his company's majority shareholder 6 months ago. And that was just the beginning of what I had to show them. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum sucking all the air from my mother's perfectly decorated dining room. My father's hands trembled as he held my phone, his eyes locked on the screen that showed exactly who owned his precious empire. This is impossible. He finally managed his voice barely above a whisper. Is it? I took my phone back, swiping to the next document. Like it was impossible that Chad lost $2.4 million at the Bellagio last month, or impossible that Mom's been forging his signature on loan applications. My mother's mimosa slipped from her fingers, splashing orange across her pristine white tablecloth. Chad looked like he might vomit. How did you... Brittany started, but I cut her off. How did I know? Or how did I acquire controlling interest in a company that's been hemorrhaging money for years? I pulled out my laptop, opening it to a presentation I'd prepared. Let me show you exactly how the daughter you dismissed built an empire right under your noses. The screen displayed a simple timeline starting 8 years ago. Remember when I suggested modernizing our systems, Dad? When I said cryptocurrency and tech investments were the future, you laughed, called it internet funny money. Well, I clicked to the next slide showing my first company's valuation, $500 million. That's just the beginning. I continued watching their faces drain of color. While you were busy buying country club memberships and covering up Chad's gambling, I was building something real. My father found his voice. You're lying. These numbers are all verified, I interrupted, by the same accountants who've been trying to warn you about the dealership's imminent collapse. Would you like to see their latest report? I clicked again, displaying the devastating financial analysis of Vandergelt Properties Group. Red numbers filled the screen, debts, losses, failed investments. Did you really think nobody would notice the shell companies Chad set up to hide his casino losses? I asked, turning to my brother. Or the way Mom's been moving money between accounts to cover the bounced checks? Chad slumped in his chair, his perfect posture finally breaking. Brittany reached for her purse, probably checking for her car keys, planning her escape. But here's what really interested me, I continued, clicking to another document. The loan applications, 3 different banks all using grandfather's trust fund as collateral. The same trust fund you just tried to take from me. My mother's hands fluttered to her throat, a nervous tell I remembered from childhood. Brooke, darling, we can explain. No need, I cut in. The SEC will handle the explanations. They're very interested in some of these transactions. The word SEC hit like a thunderbolt. My father's face went from white to gray. You wouldn't, he whispered. We're family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family? Was it family when you told potential investors I was mentally unstable because I warned them about Chad's schemes? Or when you tried to have me removed from grandfather's trust because I refused to invest in your failing expansion plans? I stood walking to the window that overlooked their perfectly manicured lawn. 6 months ago, I could have reported everything: the fraud, the embezzlement, the forged documents. But instead, I did something better. I started buying shares through various shell companies, small amounts at first, then larger ones as your desperation grew. Every time Chad needed to cover a gambling debt, every time Mom's credit cards got maxed out, I was there buying up pieces of the company at bargain prices. Why? Chad finally spoke, his voice cracking. Why not just turn us in? I turned back to face them. Because Grandfather built this company from nothing. He believed in honest work in building something real, and I couldn't watch you destroy it piece by piece. I clicked to the final slide. It showed my complete portfolio, not just the real estate empire, but my tech company's venture capital and hedge fund holdings. The total number at the bottom made my mother actually gasp. That's... My father squinted at the screen. That's over $3 billion. 3.7s, I corrected quietly. And that's just the liquid assets. Brittany stood abruptly. I need some air. Sit down, I said firmly. Everyone needs to hear this next part. She sank back into her chair, looking like she might faint. Tomorrow morning, the board of directors will receive a complete audit of the company's finances, every transaction, every hidden account, every forged signature. They'll also receive my proposal for restructuring. Restructuring? My father's voice had lost all its usual authority. Yes, you have two choices. I closed my laptop carefully. Option 1, you all resign immediately. Sign the paperwork I've prepared, admit your roles in the financial misconduct, and accept the consequences. In return, I'll ensure the company survives and your reputations aren't completely destroyed. The room was so quiet you could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the hall. And option 2, Chad asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I smiled the same cold smile my father had given me countless times over the years. Option 2 is I step back and let the SEC handle everything. They're particularly interested in those offshore accounts you set up last month, Chad, the ones in Brittany's maiden name. Brittany's head snapped up, her eyes wide with betrayal as she stared at her husband. Apparently, she hadn't known about those accounts. You have until midnight to decide. I continued gathering my things, though given the federal agents currently parked outside the downtown office tower, I'd suggest deciding quickly. My father stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You planned all this tonight, the brunch, everything. No, Dad. You planned this every time you dismissed me, every time you covered up Chad's mistakes, every time you choose appearance over reality. You planned this. I just took notes and waited. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Mom the Round Hill Club didn't reject your application. I bought it last year and had them blacklist you. Consider it payback for all those summer getaways you forgot to invite me to. The sound of my mother bursting into tears followed me out into the hallway. But I wasn't finished. There was one more revelation to come. One that would shake this family to its very foundation. I turned back one last time. Before you make your decision, you might want to ask Chad about the real reason Grandfather changed his will 2 days before he died, about the conversation they had in the hospital and the security camera footage I have from that night. Chad's face went completely blank. He knew exactly what I was talking about, and soon so would everyone else. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of New England day my grandfather used to love. I sat in his old office at the downtown tower, now my office, watching the sun rise over the city he'd helped build. The leather chair still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco, a scent that had always meant safety and wisdom to me. My phone had been buzzing since 5:00 a.m. First Brittany, then my mother, then a stream of family, friends, and business associates. I let them all go to voicemail. They had years to listen. Now they could wait. At exactly 9:00 a.m., my assistant knocked on the door. They're here. I nodded, straightening the files on my grandfather's mahogany desk. Send them in. My family filed in like mourners at a funeral. My father had aged overnight, his usual swagger replaced by a haunted stoop. My mother's makeup couldn't hide her sleepless night. Chad looked hungover, and Brittany kept her distance from him, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. Sit? I said quietly, gesturing to the chairs arranged before the desk. They sat without arguments, first in family history. Before we discuss your decisions, I began, let's address what happened in this room 8 months ago. I pressed a button on my laptop and the large screen on the wall flickered to life. Security camera footage appeared showing this very office. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. the night before my grandfather died. Chad entered looking furtive. Our grandfather sat in the same chair I am now occupied. "Turn it off," Chad pleaded. "No," I said firmly. "Everyone needs to see this." On screen, Chad paced agitatedly. The audio was crystal clear. "You can't change the will, Grandpa. You can't give everything to Brooke." Our grandfather's voice, though weak, carried his characteristic steel. "Brooke understands business, Chad. Real business, not just appearances. She'll preserve my legacy." "She abandoned the family," Chad shouted. "She plays with computers while I've given everything to this company." "Given you've taken boy, stolen, gambled, I know about Geneva." My mother gasped. Geneva, where Chad had lost $5 million of company money in a single weekend. "Brooke figured it out," grandfather continued on screen. "Brought me the proof weeks ago. But unlike you, she wanted to protect the family name, give you a chance to make it right." The next part was harder to watch. Chad, desperate and angry, grabbing our grandfather's heart medication, holding it out of reach. "Sign it back to me," he demanded, "right now." Instead, grandfather pressed the silent alarm under his desk. As security rushed in, he looked directly at the camera, directly at me, watching now, and mouthed, "Trust Brooke." He died the next morning. The official cause was heart failure. I stopped the footage. The room was deathly silent. "The police have a copy of this," I said in the quiet, along with the toxicology report showing elevated levels of stress hormones from that confrontation. "You killed him," my mother whispered, staring at Chad. "Your greed killed your own grandfather." Chad buried his face in his hands. Brittany had moved even further away from him, her face a mask of disgust. Now, I continued opening the first file on the desk. "Let's discuss your decisions about my offer." My father cleared his throat. "We'll sign whatever you want." "Good, because what I want is to set things right." I started distributing documents. "Here's how this will work." Over the next hour, I laid out the new reality. My father would take early retirement citing health reasons. Chad would enter a private rehabilitation program for his gambling addiction, non-negotiable and closely monitored. My mother would step down from all charity board social clubs and public positions. "The company will survive," I explained, watching them sign page after page. "I've already lined up partnerships with 3 major tech firms to modernize our sales platform. The Vandergelt name will continue to mean something in this city, just not what you thought it meant." "And us?" my mother asked quietly. "What happens to us?" I leaned back in grandfather's chair. "You'll receive living allowances, modest ones enough to maintain decent lives, but not your current excesses. Chad's debts will be paid off to prevent legal consequences, but he'll work a regular job earning regular wages once he completes rehabilitation." "A regular job?" Chad looked horrified. "Yes, Chad like regular people. Like I did when I started my tech company working 80-hour weeks while you were flying private jets to Monaco." I turned to Brittany. "You have a choice too. The prenup Chad had you sign. I've made sure it's void. You can leave now with a generous settlement or stay and accept the new circumstances." She stood without hesitation, placing her keys to their mansion on the desk. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours." With that, she walked out head high, never looking back at Chad. My father spoke up, his voice rough. "Why not just destroy us completely? Why show any mercy?" I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph. In it, a much younger version of my father stood beside my grandfather in front of the first Vandergelt property. Both were smiling, proud, genuine. "Because of him," I said, placing the photo on the desk. "Because grandfather believed in redemption. He gave you a chance when you were young, Dad. Now I'm doing the same." I stood signaling the end of the meeting. "The papers will be filed today. The press release about the reorganization goes out at noon. Your resignations will be described as a planned succession, allowing you all to save face. Don't make me regret this mercy." They filed out slowly, shoulders bowed, faces drawn. My mother paused at the door. "You're exactly like him, you know," she said softly. "Your grandfather. We should have seen it sooner." "Yes," I replied. "You should have." After they left, I walked to the window looking out at the city skyline where I used to walk as a child. The morning sun glinted off the skyscrapers, each one representing the legacy my grandfather had built and I had saved. My phone buzzed. A news alert. The technology sector was praising the Vandergelt Properties Group's innovative new digital sales platform. Our stock was up 12% in pre-market trading. The future was already arriving. I sat back down in my grandfather's chair, opening his old ledger. Inside, he'd written something on the last page just days before his death. Deerbrook Power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself when others give you reason not to. You understand that it's why you'll succeed where they failed. Love, Grandpa. I closed the ledger, smiling slightly. The empire wasn't just saved. It was transformed, and the daughter they dismissed had become the architect of its future. 3 months later, I stood in the main showroom of our flagship real estate office watching as our new digital display systems were installed. The Vandergelt Properties Group had become the talk of the industry, pioneering a hybrid model of online and traditional real estate sales that was revolutionizing the market. My father had settled into quiet retirement, taking up golf and staying away from business entirely. My mother had found a surprising peace in a simpler life, even starting to volunteer at a local food bank. Chad was 6 weeks into his rehabilitation program, finally facing his demons. As for me, I kept grandfather's chair, his ledger, and his belief in building something real. The billions I'd earned in tech were now building something even bigger, a legacy that would honor his name and prove that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's construction. Standing there in the gleaming showroom, I took out my phone and deleted all the angry voicemails I'd saved from years of family brunches. I didn't need them anymore. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right.